Get started in just a minute. Thanks for joining. We'll get started in just a minute. Wait for some more people to join. Hope everyone's having a good day. Looks like we have a bunch of people hopping on. Thanks for coming today. We'll get started shortly. I'm in Michigan for everyone, and weather's really warm and nice here and sunny. So I hope it's like that at where you're at. Give it one more minute, and then I'll kick the webinar off. We're also live streaming on YouTube, and this is my first time doing that, so should be fun to see how that works. Cool. Let's post on this, and then we'll get started. Thanks for everybody's patience today. I'm Patrick Garrity, VP of Operations at Blumira. Previously to joining Blumira, I worked 8 years at Duo Security. And one of the things I really enjoyed, and I'm just going to share my screen so everyone can see it. And feel free to ask questions, make comments along the way. I'm a conversation type person. But yeah, along the way, I've focused a lot on building usable security products and helping to make security tools accessible to all, and really focusing on making things easy. During stay and the demo, we're going to be talking about automating threat detection and response, and how that can be achieved, and then how Blumira can help from a product perspective. A few different things in the agenda. First, I'm going to talk about how SIEM and threat detection works today, and then how Blumira's platform can help learn about attacks on your infrastructure environment, some of the different threat detections that we do, and then what our playbooks look like from a response perspective. And we'll talk a little bit about how easy it can get integrated into any existing products you have in your IT or IT security stack. And then the last thing we'll talk a little bit about is the automation piece of response. When we're talking about automation, you'll probably see throughout today, automation is a pretty broad topic. And I'm going to break down a little bit to get started about how SIM has traditionally worked. And so if you take a look at this, you know, in an IT environment, security is a pretty complicated thing. There's a lot of different tools within the environment, particularly when we talk about correlating logs, doing threat detection and response. This tends to be a pretty complicated area that a lot of organizations have trouble accomplishing. And some of the reasons is just the complexity of you're collecting logs from third-party tools, you're incorporating threat intelligence, you're trying to build rules and alerts and have this operating and running on a proper platform. Could be cloud, could be on-premise, could involve backups, things of that nature. And I'm going to talk a little bit today about how this is a lot like choose your own adventure. There's a lot of different ways with the existing tools out there today in which you can do this, but it's not very prescriptive, right? So it tends to bring a few different challenges, which is requires security expertise, typically has gaps and provides a lack of actionable insight. And another thing I'd say from a security perspective is like most of the solutions have been targeted towards enterprise customers and those with compliance requirements. Whereas nowadays, right, every organization should be able to have similar capabilities. Now, in regards to the existing solutions today, there is a lot that needs to get done to do effective detection and response and automate this. And you kind of look at the stack, you have to do log ingestion, there's parsing, there's threat intelligence, detection rules, alerting, validation of those potential suspects or threats. How do I prioritize them? How do I investigate them? How do I respond? And then how do I report on all that? And so if you look at that, there's your SIM, there's SOAR tools, and then typically an organization then applies a lot of people to these tools. So you have security operations centers. And one of the biggest things with this approach is the challenges is most organizations in reality can't staff a full security operations center unless you're an enterprise customer, right? And that has its own challenges in itself, also even finding the resources to be able to operate the complicated tools. And so what I find is from most people I talk with that have tried this and is that it's a lot like a choose your own adventure book. I was doing a quick search and I found Journey Under the Sea, and there's actually statistics showing the chance of outcome. And what's interesting here is an unfavorable path or outcome is higher than 75% in this book. And I did some analysis or I did some research on success of SIM because consistently hear organizations that haven't successfully deployed SIM SOAR or automation and response tools in the detection area. And pulled this from 451 Research, and it matches up very closely with the chance of outcome in one of your choose your own adventure books. The biggest challenges in this area, 44% lack of mentioned they couldn't be successful because of lack of expertise, and another 28% said they couldn't be successful because of inadequate staffing. And so, although we all love choose your own adventure books, the reality is like you don't want to go in and have that probability of an outcome, right? When we're talking about cybersecurity. And so first off, I'm going to rewrite in a choose your own adventure book called Guide to Deploying SIM. Because I think that's the reality is it is a choose your own adventure. And unfortunately it's overly complicated and it doesn't need to be. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how threat detection and response should work. A few different things here. First off is my belief is it really needs to be much closer to an end-to-end capability. Customers have their existing infrastructure. Really, the first thing is identify what things can be fully automated, right? Log ingestion, log parsing, threat intelligence, detection rules, honeypots, alerting, prioritization, reporting. All these things are pretty much table stakes, but the reality is almost every solution out there gives you a choice on how to do it, which is where the room for failure comes into play. Once the threats are detected, right, then you can ask the tool, or you can ask yourself, hey, can the response to the threat actually be automated? And the reality is most organizations don't even get here. They talk a lot about SOAR and automation and response, but the response automation isn't the part that's actually critical. It's actually automating all these other capabilities that really lead you to success. Because if you simplify and automate these things, the outcomes are going to be much, much more focused on what's actually important opposed to a lot of noise. And so the question is, hey, yeah, if it can be automated, take action, right? And do the response necessary in order to take care of that threat and reduce that risk to your organization. If it can't, then there's some component of people involved, right? And that's okay. Like what we're saying is we're not going to completely eliminate the need at times for people in the equation as we look at security operations. What's important is they have the playbook and the action on what to actually do. And so giving them the tools to say, hey, here's the response you should do, the button you should push, the PowerShell command you should run, is really some of the different examples of what's needed in order to be successful here. In the market today, the only organizations that have access to tools that can help do this is enterprise customers. And it's not a single tool that does it. It's an aspect of stitching together your SIM, your threat intelligence, a lot of people, and then SOAR tools. And so most organizations, even that buy those tools, I hear time and time again, they're not successful, unfortunately. And so if we take this approach, right, really, ideally, you have a single platform that can accomplish all of this, right? And I'll talk through and walk through, but the main focus here is on outcomes at Blumira, opposed to being able to customize anything. Some of those other solutions out there are awesome. If you want customization, if you want analytics, right? But the reality is most organizations don't know what to do because of the complexity of the tool sets, and they don't have the resources to do it. So Blumira has essentially set out in a way of building an automated and streamlined solution that gets organizations to doing threat detection and response. And we're going to walk through that as far as demo capabilities with the product today. We also integrate with any service within your stack. So whether it's a firewall, it's endpoint detection, your identity stack, things like Microsoft and Okta, LastPass, and Duo. The productivity tools like Office 365, G Suite, and then also your host Windows Server, F5, and Linux, and other capabilities. And we also help organizations meet compliance requirements, whether it's PCI, NIST, CMMC, FFIEC, HIPAA, right? We're going to be able to meet those guidelines as well. The reality is a lot of people have a SIM in place because of compliance. However, they're not able to leverage or use it to get to the point of what they need from a detection and response perspective. And that's really what we do today, is help organizations get there very, very fast. Get there in a matter of hours, and a lot of times, if not days. So let's hop over to the product, and I'll demonstrate as far as the capabilities with Blumira. So I just hopped into Blumira, and we are, I should emphasize, we're a cloud application service. One of the things, first off, from a configuration perspective, is we have what's called a sensor. And the sensor is a host within your environment, and it could be on-premise, it could be within Azure, or other places. Got kids at home and the timer's going off. Hold on just 1 second. Alexa, turn timer off. Always fun during a webinar. I hope anybody else with kids can empathize with that, and if you don't, empathize with me too. Simply on the sensor, right, what we're able to do is we're able to add different modules. So this is where you're integrating with your third-party products, things like your endpoint technology, Duo as an example, G Suite. And we also have the capability to spin up a honeypot on the sensor, so we're able to detect lateral movement within a customer's environment. And this is particularly important. From my experience, worked a lot on the networking side, right? Worked for a while for Cisco. A lot of organizations, especially in the small and mid-tier, never get to network segmentation. So that becomes even more important that people have a detection capability to find out if someone's on their network that could be a bad actor, right? And this honeypot essentially allows an organization of any size to be able to do that. Now, if next up is, I was going to go to the responder view and demonstrate what it looks like when a threat actually gets surfaced within the product. And the thing here is, I showed you how we integrated really quickly, right, and via API or whatever else, very simply plugged in. Once that information is being sent to us, immediately we're starting to do threat detection. We're applying all those things from an automated process to the point where we're teeing up a playbook for your response without really having to do anything. And that's really the joy of Blumira, is you don't have to have an expert that sets out and sits down to define all these things that your traditional SIEM and threat detection products require you to do. And so here, just to show some different examples, this is an example where we have a domain administrator account created, right? And this requires some interaction from me, like, was this actually supposed to happen, right? Domain administrator is an example of providing, got access to an IT environment. And so I could mark that it was created for business purposes if it actually was, or I could, validate this suspect and turn it into a threat. And so when I do this, right, essentially it's taking and creating that into a threat that can be responded to. And there's multiple different roles. So that could go to someone in IT to go execute on a response, or it could go back to me. And the nice thing is we can customize on an individual basis, whether that someone gets an alert via voice, text message, or email. So now I can kind of go back to my dashboard, and what we're going to see in a moment here is now this turned into a threat, right? And it's going to walk me through what I actually need to do from a response perspective. So in this case, it's a PowerShell script that I need to run. And I would be able to copy, paste that, and it would then remove that domain administrator that was created. We mark it as completed. And then we can go on our way, right? So just simple, easy ways to enable people to respond, right? If we go a little bit further, just to show some other examples, when we talk about automation, what I demonstrated there is automating the front-end stack of detection and response, right? Essentially just getting the information to the service, and those threats then get surfaced that get identified with response playbooks. But in other instances, we have a way to automate actually further. And I'll show an example, the Citrix gateway exploit. Here's an example where we've detected someone's actually trying to run Citrix exploit in a customer's environment. And you can see here the list of IPs. What I can do here is I can immediately block the source IPs. So I'm going to resolve that, and it's going to put them into what's called a dynamic block list, which is on your next generation firewalls. And when I do that, we can view the block list, and we can see that those IP addresses are still now listed here. But I could actually configure Blumira service in a way that's automated, so I wouldn't even have to respond if this box is checked. In taking it a step beyond, right, I can also take community intelligence and apply that, or apply Blumira threat feeds. So really making it simple, easy, and extensible from an automation perspective for our customers. And so the idea is to help get tool in the hands of people that need the ability to essentially do threat detection and response while meeting the different compliance requirements that they have. I'm going to talk a little bit more about a few other examples or tools within Blumira as far as being able to use. automated dashboards, right? So being able to understand threats detected over time, seeing status of open and closed. And the great thing is with the product, there are different roles that you can configure. So you can have role-based access, whether it's a responder, a manager, or maybe someone that's looking at it from a reporting perspective. And we can look a little bit deeper and see, hey, what are the most common threats, top threats, that sort of stuff. But the idea is that realistically, this tool you're coming to when you need to, on occasion, when a threat's been identified, right? It's not a tool that you have to have hands-on day in and day out, like some of the traditional solutions out there. So I'm going to hop back for a moment and open up for Q&A. I'm going to open up. I don't know if there's been any questions so far, or if anybody has any questions. I'm happy to hop in a little bit further. Just put them into the chat as far as any examples people will want to see or any questions they might have. So I'm checking now. Don't see anything quite yet. But I can walk through a few other examples as far as some of the types of detections that we get into in the playbooks with those. So if I do, reconnaissance scanning is somewhat similar to what we saw before from a detection perspective. There are also a lot of things that we can do from a detection perspective that are more related to risks to a customer's environment. And so a few examples here when we're talking about data exfiltration, right? Being able to detect, hey, there's a gig outbound connection via HTTPS, data's being exfiltrated. Like that's something likely you would want to go and investigate within an organization to make sure someone's not taking data from the organization. Some other ones, pretty common, and you see this in the news. We're actually talking, I think we have a webinar next week about this, which is actual public IP addresses connecting via RDP to the network, right? And this is a really good example where we're able to detect this, right? And so we can essentially notify of this risk, and then confirm, hey, this action's been taken care of, where this has been put behind a VPN, or the firewall is blocking connections now, so that's not a risk to your organization. So really simple, easy, and intuitive ways to help organizations quickly and effectively detect and respond to risk without requiring much of any overhead from a deployment or management perspective. I think there's one more. I thought there was one more, but just to show some other examples, like for compliance requirements, a lot of people are required to do certain types of audits, and then be able to report on them as well. So there are examples where you may want to actually do audits from a compliance perspective, things like user lockouts. And those are other examples where we would help guide a responder essentially, or someone in IT, to be able to validate these things when they do happen. So that's really the joy, is like, this is about enabling IT. You don't have to be a security professional or someone with deep security skill sets to be able to do these security operations functions with Blumira. I'm going to check again, see if there's any other questions. It looks like there's a few. One of the questions is, what are some of the challenges you see with some of the other products in the market that are doing security automation? I think that's a good question. Yeah, I think the reality is there are quite a few products that focus around automation. And I'll emphasize this, like I talked about a moment ago. Those tool sets typically layer on other products, and they typically require a pretty sophisticated skill or level of expertise in order to deploy successfully. If you do look at security orchestration automation tools, they can be incredibly useful. What's important there is your foundation is operating really well before you go down the path of starting to automate with SOAR. But the main thing kind of comes back to the fact that you actually do need a deep level of security operations experience, and typically a team of resources to deploy those products. And yeah, a lot of people on several people on the Blumira team, right, have operated these different products and have a good understanding that, like, yeah, you do have to have a team of experts, and they are relatively complicated. And to be honest, most of the products out there, even the newer products that have come to market, as you look at the security information event management, they still continue to take this approach of choose your own adventure. And I do believe that's the core reason why most deployments fail. Security should be set it and forget it, plug and play, go. It should not be focused necessarily around choose your own adventure, 100% customization. All right, let me see if there's any other questions. If you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A on the Zoom channel. So, all right. I'm going to hop to a few other. Oh, I got some more questions coming. I might have to ping you on the first one. I'm not sure. Good question, though. I'll follow up afterwards. Question around multi-tenancy. So, yeah, actually, you said you saw the credit union listed there. Actually, yes. On a Blumira perspective, we do support multi-tenancy. Commonly where we see this is where organizations are looking to do management of several clients, or maybe they manage several different environments. So we do have the capability to support multi-tenancy within the product today. The other one, which I'm not going to claim to be the I'll get back with it because I'm not sure. It does look like a protocol level question. It's a good one, but I'd rather get the right answer before I try and answer it. So I'll get back with the person that asked that question. Is there any other questions? I'll wait a few more minutes in case anything else comes up. What I would say is if you do have interest from a product perspective in Blumira, feel free to email sales@blumira.com. And then the other thing is next week we do have a webinar regarding protecting against the rise in remote access attacks, and really talking about what I mentioned a bit earlier, which is RDP access exposure and where some of that is being targeted from. I think it's really cool. With our service I kind of mentioned, there's a honeypot capability to do detection within your internal environment. We also, as an organization, run honeypots externally to do a lot of understanding of threats out there and security intelligence. So it will be a really interesting webinar that you should join us for as well. So thank you, everyone, for. Oh, we got some more questions. For a large enterprise, how many sensors are needed? Where are sensors recommended to be installed? Yeah, that's a good question. Typically it depends on the customer's environment and how large the locations the customer has. A good example is like if you're a coffee chain, like you wouldn't put a sensor at every single store. You'd probably have that data sent to a central location through that sensor on your network, right? If you have a large location, that's where I would say you'd probably put a sensor in the locations that are going to be larger or more significant. And then you might put a sensor as well in places like your cloud applications or services, so AWS, Azure, and whatnot. So, yeah, happy to answer that question too. If you want to email sales@blumira.com as far as in a little bit more detail, but yeah, pretty much anywhere you're going to have a larger location to collect that information and that data from your tools. Cool. Well, thank you everyone for attending today. Appreciate everyone that is on the live stream, and appreciate everyone that joined the webinar. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us, sales@blumira.com. We're happy to provide a more tailored conversation and demo around the product, and happy to help get you up and running if it's a need or requirement you have. We can deploy in a matter of a couple hours, so it's really easy, effective, and it's cool to be democratizing security on the detection and response side. So thank you, everyone. Oh, there might be more questions. I'm not going to let you go. I'll keep on going. Question about does our product integrate with other apps, tools like Slack or PagerDuty? That is a good question. Currently, we do integrate with SMS so we can send to PagerDuty. We are planning on integrating in a more formal fashion with both Slack and PagerDuty. So it is something that we will be doing in the future. And then one other great question, how does it map to the compliance requirement frameworks? Is this configurable? Is there a report for, say, PCI? Yeah, so first off on the compliance side, what I would say there is we have the compliance mapping on our website as far as how we help map to that. We map actually extremely well and go well beyond other SIMs in the market, and that's by default. We are working on reporting capabilities that where you would have a list of compliance-based reporting. Today, we have the reports as far as the ones needed for PCI, but in order to make it even more easier, right, for organizations, the ability to just point and click to the name of this specific report under PCI is the thing that we're working on. And then the last question, is pricing based on the data consumed? Pricing is actually based on per user, you know, and that's per user as far as like employee within your environment. We've heard a lot of feedback that due to, you know, licensing based on data volumes, it's extremely difficult to be able to predict the pricing. And we do have some of the starting pricing on our website if you go to blumira.com/pricing. So thanks, everybody. Once again, join us for our webinar that's happening June 2nd. I think that's 2 weeks from now, a little bit less. And that will be Matt Warner, our CTO.